Regular Show was written incredibly. It was able to take even the most mundane of concepts and ideas only to transform them into fantastical stories that capture you for the episode's entire runtime. They could write some of the funniest scenes you've ever witnessed, but in the same breath flip it on you, resulting in some of the most raw, genuine, and compelling storytelling I've ever witnessed. It's a shame this doesn't apply to the writing of Mordecai's relationships. Swear I remember them for being garbage. Seasons of mediocrity, coupled with some of the worst moments in the show's run. Like, I get love is a complicated thing, even more so to write, but this, I don't even know what to call this. But we'll get to that. Let's start from the beginning to find out if it's as bad as everyone, myself included, thought it was, or if it was just a misunderstood masterpiece. To do that, we gotta talk about Margaret, and I'ma keep it too real. I've never liked her. I don't think anyone should. And if you do, I gotta believe you either watch the show passively or you just like characters who are nice and sweet. Cause this girl was a nothing burger on an empty paper plate with a personality akin to the invisible boatmobile. Also, are we just gonna skip past the fact her father, birds?
You a nasty nigga, bro. I like your style though.
Anyways, she debuts in episode 3, marking the fall off of the series. Margaret awakens Mordecai's corny side, the side of him willing to do absolutely anything for the sake of getting some feathered cheeks, which would be respectable if I was an ornithologist. Instead, I found myself keeled over on the ground, dying of cringe. All of Mordecai's worst traits can be traced back to his relationship with Margaret and the episodes the two shared together. His mental illness, his insecurity, his piss poor decision making, and to top it all off, he's got his own verb from this.
So you pulled a Mordecai, huh?
We're only able to talk about the two of them interacting in season 3. For the first two, she's just like an object Mordecai projects his horniness onto. And honestly, if Margaret was just a background character, that would have been cool. But she's not, so you're just stretching out this nonsense for no reason. All hater energy aside, when they finally start, actually speaking, the two of them do have some solid interactions and levels of chemistry, allowing Margaret to be fleshed out a little more. Every Mordecai Margaret episode this season, a legitimate banger. I can't cap with you. Bad Kiss is just questionable. I mean, sure, it's entertaining, but it's pretty infuriating seeing Mordecai go to the ends of the earth to have stank breath. Heading into season 4, we finally reach the climax of this metaphorical edging with episodes such as picking up Margaret and meteor showers. It took 4 seasons and multiple near-death experiences for them to just get together, and it's not even official. I cannot comprehend why they drag this story along, and it gets even worse when they have one other episode centered around them before Stake Me Amadeus, where Margaret just leaves, so all 4 scenes of build-up just go up in smoke. Now, I understand this is very realistic, tragically beautiful, honestly, the woman of Mordecai's dreams running out of his life surrounded by shell cases and gunfire, but if I'm watching a cartoon, you were not gonna take me on this roller coaster to give me this unfulfilling ending. In my opinion, I'd have preferred that after Laundry Woes, Mordecai is still visibly hurt, never seeing Margaret again, instead having to completely move on, taking the first step when he reunites with someone after a New Year's kiss. Episode 1, she's been better than Margaret, but her taste in guys is questionable to say the least. When we're introduced to her, it's at just an odd time in the Margaret arc. So the two briefly engage before Mordecai fumbles so severely, we just don't see her for a while. However, the way she's reintroduced to the story was incredible, as well as keeping that bit of tension from their first encounter. Then stuff gets strange, cause how did Shorty immediately become a Margaret replacement? A Margaret substitute, hanging with Eileen and such. Lucky for her, she's got a more interesting back and forth with Mordecai, so I can just ignore it. The show sets up their dynamic well and makes the relationship between the two way more casual, which I really like. I will say it does lose that fantastical element. Instead of having Mordecai meet the time god and kill his best friend, we'll see him pull several Mordecais and be an overall nuisance to common sense. Still though, it did create one of the most touching and introspective scenes in the series.
Part of me is still waiting for Margaret to come back. And sometimes I'll see something or I'll smell something and it makes me think of her even though I don't want to.
Just wish Margaret never did. The Mordecai CJ pairing is the one, and I did need it sullied by the return of a character I don't really care for. But I'm a fair guy, so right before we get to the most toxic love triangle in cartoon history, we can have the two ladies duke it out for supremacy. Margaret and Mordecai had a fun dynamic too when they got into that element, and I will say her being a part of the story did wonders for Mordecai's character development. You can really see the difference in him from pilot to finale. The episodes with Mordecai and Margaret are more entertaining though. I can't even cap with you. Mordo and CJ's just be the most mundane stuff ever, and if they weren't so great together, I'd be mind-numbingly bored. Like if the two never got together, CJ could have been one of the homies, and I think the fan base would still have the same amount of love for her as they do currently. The pair showed the fun side of relationships, how someone can be your best friend and your partner. Brace yourself. All of the following is just so awful, so I'm gonna try and tackle everything one at a time to prevent an oncoming aneurysm. 1. Margaret has been gone almost 2 full seasons, no call, no text, nothing. B. Her and Mordecai wasn't even together that long. Matter of fact, they never even got together. And 12. CJ infinitely better than her, meaning that my time shouldn't even be wasted on this hogwash. I'll always ask the writers why they felt Mordecai needed to cheat on CJ. It couldn't be a slower build to that. Maybe Mordecai starts hanging with Margaret more, CJ gets jealous, they hang out as a group, the two have some tension, then boom, one day Mordecai fumbles a real attempt at happiness because he want to be out here remembering. I promise I forgot how trash Mordecai be later in the show's run. Instead of apologizing to CJ, he tries to defend his actions and asks Eileen for backup. Like, cuz, that is not Eileen, that's an eyewitness, you sick fiend. The two somehow make up, showcasing CJ's maturity in a situation that never deserved it. So I'm fast forwarding to the most infuriating episode in regular show's run. Muscle Man and Starla have been together for so many years / seasons at this point, and you choose as writers to have that trampled on by Mordecai's mess? Legitimately disrespectful from an off-screen perspective. If you choose to go from an in-show POV, Mordecai was begged by one of his best friends to read a letter, and while doing so called the worst audible in American history. I'll be, well, not the first to admit it. I pulled a couple Mordecai's before, but the day I override someone's wedding to discuss my crumbling love life is the day I've outlived my usefulness on this earth. The only satisfying conclusion this episode could have had is CJ walking out as Mordecai's getting tarred, feathered, and beaten. After watching Mordecai's love story saga, is it overhated? I say no, surprisingly enough. Some sections of the story are way too long and drawn out, with a conclusion that was far from satisfying. I'll still say this though, even though nobody wants to hear it, but if you take away the supernatural occurrences, it's a self-contained story about someone who struggles with relationships while they're growing and changing. Truthfully, it's painfully realistic. When I was a kid, I couldn't understand why Mordecai would make certain decisions, and I'll even extend that statement to Margaret and CJ, depending on the scene, but now I get it. Does it make me suddenly adore this season's long tail? No, but I will give credit to regular show's writing team for creating this. Whether you feel it's good or bad or in between, it's raw, it's genuine, it's authentic. If you're watching this trying to get over your Margaret or CJ, maybe you're still pining after them, understand this. There will be times when you absolutely ruin something beautiful, or you say something stupid, or get hurt, or whatever. You just gotta be strong enough to try again. There's someone out there for everyone, I'd like to think. Just try not to pull a Mordecai.